What's up? So today I thought it'd be fun to show how to animate the intro that you just saw. I already made it once. In hindsight, I should have just recorded it the first time, but I didn't. So we're gonna go through it as quickly as we can and try to show the fundamentals behind what creates it. Let's get started. So we are in After Effects. If you've never used After Effects before, you should definitely try if it's something you're interested in trying. It's an extremely complex program. There's so much to know. I feel like I could never know everything in it. There's just a ton there, and it is absolutely the kind of program that's going to get you frustrated, especially in the beginning, and then eventually you'll kind of learn how to problem solve through things, and you'll definitely be looking things up a lot. So I already made a new project. Now I just got to go to Composition, New Composition. We're going to call it Main Comp, and we're going to make the resolution 1920 by 1080. I'll just go with 1080p because that is fine. All the other settings don't really matter right now. So now we have our composition. First thing we're going to do is we're basing it off of, like, this is the last slide of the original one, and when it comes in it kind of has these lines that orbit around this circle and kind of transition it in. So we're going to make those lines first because they happen first. So to do that, I'm going to go up here to the ellipse tool, and I am just going to draw an ellipse, and I'm holding the shift key so that it stays proportional and doesn't get all messed up like that. So I'll just make it like that big, and to center it I'm just going to go to align, click on these. Now it's aligned in the X and Y direction. You'll notice this thing right here, this is called our anchor point. Basically that is what the shape will pivot off of when we start to move it. So having it over here in this case is no good because it won't spin on an axis. It'll be all kind of lopsided. So we want this in the middle. So this allows us to move our anchor point. And you'll notice right here I have snapping turned on. It's going to default to off, but you're going to want that on so that you can move it right to the middle and get it right, so you're not guessing, because you don't want to guess. You'll also notice my circle doesn't really have anything to it. I'm going to go back to the ellipse. Yours probably looks like this because that's what it would default. I just made this the other day, the same exact intro, so it was already kind of set up for me. But what you're going to want to do is go to Fill and then click on this little thing with the red line through it, and that's going to change it to No Fill. And then on this stroke right here, you're going to want to click on that and give it a stroke, hit OK, and then right here you can adjust the thickness of the stroke. So we're just going to set it, I don't know, that looks fine to me. And now we have our circle. So that's cool, we have a circle. At this point we can actually start trying to animate it. So we're going to go drop down on the shape layer, and we're going to actually add an attribute, and we're going to use trim paths. And if we drop down on trim paths, you'll see these little stopwatch icons. These are for creating keyframes, which you will learn a lot about if you ever use this program. So what a keyframe is it basically tells the object or the shape or whatever it is what position you want it in at a certain time. So by setting it at different positions and different times, you can move it around. So we're gonna use the start keyframe. We're gonna keep the cursor right at the beginning and just keep that at 0%. Then we're going to move a little bit into it, and I'm going to increase this to 100%. And you'll notice that now, with this effect, it's basically taking away the circle, or you could make it bring in the circle. That'd be kind of cool if you were making like a stopwatch. You could like tick away with the time. By moving this keyframe, you can adjust how long it takes to do that. So I'm going to keep it here. And now we don't want the circle to disappear. We just want a line kind of like that rotates around it. So we're going to utilize this end keyframe option. I'm going to move this a little ahead of the first start keyframe, and I'm going to click the end one, and I'm going to set this to 0%. And then a little bit after the second end keyframe, I'm going to go ahead and set it to 100%. So now you'll notice that we just have that little line. And if these two groups are spaced equally, then the line will stay the same size the whole time. But if you spread one apart, then the line's going to change sizes and kind of grow. We'll just keep them basically about the same for now. I think that looks pretty good. So that's pretty cool, but you'll notice it doesn't look super smooth. And to fix that, we're just gonna highlight these keyframes and press F9 on the keyboard. You can also do this by right-clicking, going to Keyframe Assistant, and clicking on Easy Ease. What Easy Ease does is it basically smooths out the transition of the keyframes and makes it a little bit more analog, and it looks smoother and better. In this case, it's hard to tell the difference, but you can tell if you look closely, and in certain situations, you're definitely going to be able to tell the difference. So now we have one, let's make another. We're not going to go through all that again. We're just going to click on this shape layer, Control C, copy it, and Control V, paste it. Now we can drop down. You'll notice it doesn't look like anything changed because it's right underneath this other one. So we're going to go to Transform, and then in the rotation here, we're going to put this at 180 degrees, so it's directly opposite the first one. Now we have two. So that's pretty cool. Look at that. Now that we have two, I'm going to add two more. And I'm going to do that. I'm just going to copy this one, paste it. Now we have a third, but I don't want it to be exactly the same, so I'm actually going to go to Transform, and I'm going to scale this one down so that it fits inside of the other two. And then I'm also going to just thin it out a little bit so it's a different size. That looks good. And then why don't I also rotate it so that's over here. Cool. I'll get rid of these so they're just not taking up space. And now I'm going to copy this one, paste it, go to Transform, and I'll rotate this one away too. And I'll space these out a little bit differently. So it looks, well, I don't know. I'll just guess on it and maybe it'll look cool. Alright, so now you'll see, look at that, we have them all moving. So that's kind of cool. But it isn't as cool as it could be because they're all moving at the same time, and that's not really the look I'm going for in this case. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to, let's say, these two inner ones, because we're already on one of them. I'm going to go to Contents and back to Trim Path, and you'll see our original keyframes. I'm just going to take these last two end ones and space them out a little bit, and this is going to change the timing so that they don't all move at the same exact time. Some of them are slower, some of them are faster. So I'm going to do 4 and 3 and space them out just about the same. So now we get that. So that's pretty cool. You could certainly play around with all these settings and make it your own, add more lines, less lines, do something else, but for the sake of this, we got the gist of what's going on there. And before we move on, we're just going to highlight all these, right click, and pre-compose them. We're going to call this rotation. So now this just kind of consolidates all of that work we just did so that we don't have to look at it every time. And now we can move on to doing the center portion. Okay, so for the center portion, we're going to be making kind of this part right here. So to do that, we're going to make a new composition, and we're going to make this one a square because the circle is going to fit inside of it. So we'll just do 500 by 500, which should be plenty of pixels for this. And now we have a square. So we're going to make another ellipse. We're already on the ellipse tool conveniently. Hold Shift. There we go. And for this one, we're going to turn off the stroke and we're going to turn on the fill. So now we have a circle, and we're going to align that again. The anchor point isn't so crucial on this one because the circle itself isn't going to move. Now we're going to go to the text tool, and I'm just going to create some text. I'm going to go, why don't I say day, and then in a separate text layer, I'm going to say 30. So we'll just arrange these so they look okay. Obviously that font's kind of boring, but we'll go with it and we'll say day 30 to change it up, and maybe I can use it on the last day. So for this one, if you remember, I had this word, the word videos kind of came in from the side, and then the 30 stayed there, and there was this kind of liquid that filled up and revealed this whole circle. So the first thing we're going to do is, as an example, to show you that side-to-side motion, I'm gonna animate this 30 so that it comes in. So I already did all this work putting the 30 exactly where I want it, so I don't want to do that again. So I'm gonna move down to where I want the animation to end, and then I'm gonna go over and set a keyframe on the scale and position, because I'm also gonna kind of make it get a little bit bigger too. Now I'm gonna move back to the beginning, and I'm gonna change the position so that it's off of the circle. And I'm also gonna decrease the scale just a little bit so that it grows. And now you can see 30 comes in and it grows. And that's a little bit slow, so I'm gonna move these keyframes back. Let's make it fast. There's the 30. And now you can really see how that's a little bit jumpy there. We're gonna highlight and press F9, and look how much smoother that is. So that's kind of an example of how to make things come in and out. In the original one, I also had this word challenge, and it actually came from where this videos word is. But what I did is I added a mask where the word challenge can only be seen when it's within the mask. The mask was drawn right at the bottom of this word, and then when challenge is animated to come down, you can see through essentially a hole that the mask creates, and see that word appear. But we're not going to do that here because we're just saying day 30. So now we have our circle animated pretty well, and we can go back to our main comp, and we can bring our comp one, which is what we called that circle one, into the main one. So now already you can see that looks kind of cool. I'm gonna actually go ahead and scale up this composition one, which is this circle, and make it so it fits within the rotating lines a little bit better. So I guess right about there. You see, that looks kind of cool. But now we want that liquid that comes up and reveals it. So to do that, we're just gonna click on it, and we're gonna go over to the pen tool, and we're just gonna draw a mask around it. And I'm gonna give myself kind of a lot of points on the top, and I'm gonna click and hold, kind of move around, and see if I can get sort of a wave look. And it doesn't have to be perfect, it just has to very vaguely resemble water. I'm just gonna connect that. So now, under this comp one, I have a mask, and I'm gonna go down to mask path, and I'm gonna set a keyframe where I want it to end. So why don't I'll have it end right about there, so that the 30 comes in right as it's ending. And I'm just gonna put a keyframe on that mask path, and the mask is gonna not be covering anything. Now I'm gonna move back to the beginning, and I'm gonna adjust the mask so it doesn't cover the circle at all. I'm just gonna click and drag these points down. Move these as well. We don't have to be perfect here, but see already that kind of looks like a liquid. Move this down a little bit. It almost looks like a liquid now, but I'm gonna make a couple adjustments. I don't really like this, so I'm gonna go kind of in the middle here and adjust that again so it's a little more fluid looking. So you can see that actually kind of looks like liquid. The more you play around with it, the better you can get it, and I think that looks decent for the purposes of this. So now we have our liquid animating in, our 30 coming from the side, and our lines rotating around the circle. The last thing that we did in the original one was change the scale of the circle. So we're gonna do that super easily by just going into the properties of the circle. We're gonna say we want it to come in, and then it's gonna scale up once these lines go away. And then in the original one, I made it scale down very quickly, so it just kind of looked like it disappeared. So we're gonna go to right just before these lines disappear. We're gonna set a scale keyframe, and then we're gonna move a little bit further away, and we're gonna make it bigger. And now if you watch it, it's gonna grow. And then right after this one, I'm gonna make it just go to 0. So you see it grows and then it gets smaller. Now we're gonna ease these. We're gonna move this one back to kind of slow that process down a little bit. So it grows and then it shrinks. And we have a rough but pretty cool intro. And now we're just about done. So let's play it back and see what we made. So obviously it's not perfect, but hopefully that gave you the building blocks of kind of what it takes to make something like that. And maybe you can try it yourself. There's so much, even just in this little project, that you can modify to make your own. And obviously this software is extremely complex and you can create so many different things. But hopefully you enjoyed. I know this is kind of an oddball, but I figured I'd throw it in there. See you tomorrow.